Three sharp knocks rattled the door on a Saturday morning, the kind of knocking you'd expect from cops making an arrest, not neighbors dropping by. I cracked the curtain, and on the porch stood three people in identical windbreakers, clipboards in hand, wearing the kind of tense expressions you'd see on FBI agents mid operation. One of them held up a glaring orange notice with bold black letters: Property condemned, HOA Order 774. There was just one problem. I don't have an HOA. I don't even have neighbors. Out here, cell service is a coin toss, let alone any kind of organized homeowners association. I stayed still for a moment, coffee steaming in my hand, while inside came the unmistakable sound of metal sliding into a chamber, a quiet reminder I wasn't alone. The trio exchanged uneasy glances, then turned into startled deer spotting a lion. One dropped his clipboard straight into the mud, another tripped headfirst into my line of garden gnomes, and the last tried to save face by speed walking back to the van, until his jacket snagged on the mailbox and ripped clean down the middle. I just took another sip of coffee, tugged my bathrobe with the flying pig print a little tighter, and smiled. The world might be chaos, but at least this morning I knew one thing for certain. If this really was a homeowners association, they just hired the three worst employees in history. My name's Dean Holbrook. If you asked me where I live, I'd tell you straight. Right on the edge of Lake Antler Estates. Sounds fancy, right? But in reality, that so-called estates is just a ghost of a subdivision that died after the housing market crash in 2008. The model home still has a faded sign dangling out front. The golf course was never more than a patch of weeds, and the community center? Just a slab of concrete where frogs gather to croak when it rains. Everybody else cleared out long ago. The HOA board dissolved back in 2012, right after the last member packed up and retired to Florida. And me? I stayed. I like the eerie quiet of the pine woods out back. I like not having anyone telling me what color I can paint my house. And best of all, there's no Karen next door pounding on my door about when I drag my trash cans out. My life's simple. I grow tomatoes for seed swaps, sell handmade walking sticks on Etsy to city hipsters, and sometimes share bits of bread with the raccoons who drop by my porch for a free meal. I'm a veteran, divorced, and currently not interested in anybody else's drama. That's why I chose to live where the nearest person is a 15-minute drive away. And things would have stayed that way, peaceful and quiet, until the day Beverly CR showed up, waving her grand mission to restore order to Lake Antler Estates. Sounds impressive, right? Problem is, there's nothing left here to restore. Beverly CR. That was the name I first heard the day she rolled her old SUV, plastered with a shiny Community First decal, onto the dusty back road of Lake Antler. At a glance, you'd think she was just an ex-county fair queen, hair teased sky high, lipstick fire engine red, and a smile perfected back in 1992 when she won the title of Miss Corn Festival. But Beverly wasn't here for nostalgia. She came back to restore order, her exact words, to a place that now had nothing more than a few log cabins, some squirrels, and me. And she didn't come alone. She brought her self-appointed board of directors, her sister Patricia, her cousin Gerald, and a guy named Todd, who, I swear, only signed on because he was getting paid in Subway sandwich coupons. All of them wore matching blue polos embroidered with Lake Antler Estates Community Preservation Council. Sounds official, right? In reality, they looked like a Walmart street team handing out flyers for a clearance sale. On day one, Beverly launched her letter campaign. A thick envelope, sealed with a homemade HOA logo, straight from word clip art, landed in my mailbox. Inside, your tomato shed does not meet community architectural standards, violation of section 4.3. I chuckled and set it aside. A few days later came another. Your cabin must be repainted in uniform taupe. This time, I laughed harder. But the third letter almost made me choke on my morning coffee. You owe $428 to the snow removal fund. Let me repeat, Lake Antler hasn't seen 2 inches of snow in over a decade. The roads were never even finished, so what exactly were they planning to plow? And that's when it hit me. Beverly wasn't joking. Those letters were just the opening salvo. She truly believed her HOA authority was real, and she was dead set on enforcing it. From that moment on, my quiet lakeside life officially turned into an all-out war with the ultimate HOA Karen. At first, I thought Beverly would stop at anonymous envelopes, a few buzzing drones like oversized mosquitoes, and her clipboard-toting relatives playing night watch. But then she leveled up, and believe me, that was the day I truly learned what Karen final boss level meant. One May morning, I stepped out onto the porch, coffee still steaming in my hand, and froze. My tomato garden, my pride and joy award winner at seed fairs, was littered with blinding red plastic signs, non-compliant vegetation, removed by order of HOA. The way they used the word removed made it sound like my tomatoes had committed felonies. Worse yet, nearly half the vines had been hacked down. Someone, no prize for guessing who, had snuck in during the night and gone at them with a pair of Home Depot pruning shears like they were on official duty. I had to breathe deep a few times just to keep from hurling my hot coffee over the fence. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I drove into town and saw it at the main intersection, a massive billboard. Splashed across it in sloppy black paint, Resident Dean Holbrook owes HOA $500. Red level aesthetic violation. Propped right there on public land, next to the Welcome to Lake Antler sign. I swear, if a tourist had driven by that moment, they'd have thought I was on some federal most wanted list. I was torn between laughing until I choked and punching a wall. This wasn't petty nonsense anymore. It was open war. So I struck back in the only way a reclusive, coffee-addicted HOA-hating guy could. I built a new sign, twice as big, right at the entrance road. In bold, gleaming gold letters it read, "Beverly's HOA is not real. Don't pay. Don't get scammed. And above all, don't touch my tomatoes." It didn't take long before my sign turned into a roadside attraction. People drove out just to snap selfies with it, posting under the hashtag Cabin Guy versus Fake HOA. And Beverly? Her lipstick quivered with rage. That's when I knew she wasn't done yet. She was gearing up for the nuclear option. That Tuesday, I was in the kitchen flipping my first pancake when I heard engines in the yard. Not one vehicle, 3. I looked out the window and thought I'd stumbled into some low-budget TV drama. A squad of so-called compliance officers climbing out, wearing windbreakers with a fake HOA logo and plastic badges that looked like they came from the Walmart toy aisle. Leading the charge, later I'd learn it was Beverly's nephew, Roger, rapped on the door with the swagger of a Wild West sheriff and shouted, "This property is in severe violation of community architectural standards. We're here to initiate foreclosure proceedings." His voice cracked, but he tried to make it sound authoritative. I opened the door slowly, still in my flying pig bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. The one that reads, "I've buried worse." I didn't say a word. Just took a sip and locked eyes with Roger. Behind him, his 2 associates were a mess. One tugging at his badge strap like it was choking him, the other sweating buckets like he'd been drafted into a track meet. Then I leaned just slightly, enough to reveal the shotgun propped by the doorframe. I didn't touch it, didn't raise it. It just sat there, quiet as a reminder. This is private land. And I take that very seriously. In that instant, I swear you could hear Roger's heartbeat hit the dirt. His eyes went wide. He stumbled backward and landed flat in my basil patch. One of his buddies fumbled and dropped his clipboard, papers scattered like a panicked flock of butterflies. The third guy didn't even try. He just bolted full speed, windbreaker flapping behind him like a knockoff superhero cape. Roger scrambled up, covered in mud, still trying to point a shaky finger at me. This isn't over. You'll be hearing from our legal team." I calmly sipped my coffee and said, "Perfect. But do you want me to call 911 to report trespassing now or after I finish my pancakes?" You've never seen 3 grown men retreat so fast. They left behind a trail of scattered paperwork, one mud-caked shoe, and best of all, a fake badge. I collected the lot, framed it, and hung it in my living room with a plaque that reads, "Worst foreclosure attempt in history, October 2024. And the shoe? I turned it into a flower pot. Honestly, the petunias in it have never looked better. That afternoon, I called Sheriff Morrison. I didn't even get halfway through the story before he started chuckling down the line. Turns out, Beverly had been on the sheriff's radar for years. She'd once filed a complaint about a neighbor keeping non-regulation birds, demanded an investigation into a suspicious garden gnome display, and even reported that the moonlight was too bright and interfering with her sleep. Morrison had just been waiting for the day she actually broke the law, so he'd have a reason to act. And congratulations, that day had finally arrived. He drove out to my cabin, took photos of the scene, and gathered up the scattered paperwork. I handed him the fake badge too. Shiny, cheap, looked like something handed out in a kid's Halloween kit. Morrison laughed so hard his face went red. "Dean," he said, "this is gold, solid evidence." But the real twist wasn't the badge. Buried in the pile of dropped papers was a detailed list of people who had already paid HOA fees. I recognized a few names, landowners who only visited town a couple times a year. They'd thought the fund was legit and dutifully wired money into the so-called Lake Antler Security Fund. Morrison traced the account and discovered it wasn't a fund at all. It was a plain old Zelle account, routed directly to Beverly's dog grooming business, grandly named Pristine Paws. In just 6 months, she'd pocketed close to 12 grand. From snow removal fees in a place that hadn't seen 2 inches of snow in a decade, to security fees with no guards, all the way down to aesthetic maintenance fees, in a community that now consisted of me and a handful of squirrels. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't parody anymore. It was outright fraud. And now, it wasn't just me. Suddenly, the whole town had a reason to be furious. Morrison snapped his notebook shut with a grin like he'd just won the lottery. "Dean," he said, "Christmas came early. This time, Karen's not walking away." Beverly was arrested on a Thursday morning. She was in the middle of hosting what she called a community standards workshop at the town library. Basically a meeting of 7 people, most of them duped into believing the HOA had been resurrected. When the officers walked in, Beverly was still up at the podium, preaching about the uniformity of mailbox colors. Time seemed to slow like a bad movie. Then Sheriff Morrison stepped forward, read out the warrant, and the tiny room erupted in whispers. Beverly flailed, shouting, "This is a conspiracy against community improvement." Unfortunately for her, community improvement isn't a recognized legal defense. The trial that followed was nothing short of a small-town blockbuster. Beverly insisted on representing herself. She brought in a PowerPoint titled "The Importance of Residential Aesthetics," and even tried to submit my tomato plants as evidence of architectural decline. The judge raised his eyebrows so high his glasses nearly slid off. Beverly's court-appointed standby lawyer just slumped in his chair, looking like each slide she clicked through shaved another year off his life. The evidence spoke for itself. Fake badges, the Zelle account, testimony from duped residents, and best of all, the dashcam video of her enforcement team fleeing my cabin. The whole courtroom burst into laughter when Roger's fall into my basil patch replayed on the screen. 47 minutes after the jury stepped into deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty on every count. The sentence: 3 years probation, 800 hours of community service, full restitution to every victim, plus a $20,000 fine. And most importantly, the judge made it official. The defendant is prohibited from joining, forming, or participating in any homeowners association, real or fake, for the rest of her natural life. I swear Beverly's jaw dropped so far I thought it might hit the bench. As deputies escorted her out, I took another sip of coffee and thought, at last, Lake Antler was free. And yes, I still keep the big sign out front. Only now I've added one last line at the bottom in bold golden letters: HOA, rest in peace.